Okay guys, finishing a scissor choke of any type, so finishing pretty much any choke with your legs. So basically the first thing I want to kind of touch on, and if you guys have followed my writings that I put up on Meat Fighters or Vet Life or something like that, that talk about how to actually get a scissor finish, then all this is going to be review for you. But the first thing I want to kind of talk about, and we kind of get this wrong in jiu-jitsu, where we say that the arteries are right here on the side of the neck. They're not. They're actually slightly to the anterior position of the neck. So if you can actually feel it if you push, here's the bone, here's the sternocleidomastoid. This little spot here, that's going to be where you can kind of feel your pulse in there, right? You can feel that it's not back here behind the sternos and getting into that kind of levator scap area. So it's in more of this anterior position. So we don't want any choke that we're doing. In fact, I'm going to cover a shit ton of chokes here, okay? We don't want any, when we're doing a choke, we don't want to try to pressure in here, and we can't pressure in here, right? When we get onto that posterior spinal side, we can't finish there. There's nothing there to choke. All you're going to do is give somebody a bad neck ache, maybe herniate a disc in their back. That's not what our goal is, right? Our goal is to finish the fight fast by choking somebody out. So when we are doing any type of choke, we want to be not only putting pressure straight in, but we want to be coming down just a little bit. And when we talk about most chokes, and when we are talking about triangle choke here in a minute, we either are going to be doing that with our body. So if I'm doing a rear naked choke, I created this V here, right? And really the trachea is not going to be down here, right? It's actually going to be a little bit higher because the V is not going to be wide enough to allow your trachea to be hitting there. So you shouldn't be getting into this short choke where you're actually just crushing the windpipe. That's an incredibly ineffective way of trying to knock somebody out. Sometimes it happens, but that's not our goal. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to put those arteries right here, right, that are fitting in that V, so it's hitting the anterior sides, not the lateral sides, right? And then we will be driving down and in and closing up that space so that we're pressuring in inward this direction, right? Not quite lateral, but not quite forward either. It's nice and in that kind of 45 degree. So sometimes we don't have the option of doing that with our limbs by itself, and so we have to borrow our opponent's limbs, right? So if I'm doing a head and arm choke or a triangle choke or something like that, what's going to happen is this arm is going to be covering this side of the body, right? And this is going to be driving in there. A Darce choke is another good example, or a anaconda arm and guillotine. So there's a lot of little examples there where we're driving in, but we want to make sure that that's driving into the artery, not being pushed up and back or coming straight forward, but really kind of driving it into the neck. And again, we'll talk about that more later on. I should stop saying that altogether. So talking about a straight head scissor, like if you are on your side and somebody's facing the ceiling, you're going to be crushing the trachea. If they turn their head, now you're right on that artery, right? So it's kind of that head position. And now I know a lot of people don't pay attention, and maybe they'll be able to squeeze hard enough from the straight in the sides to get somebody to get lightheaded or potentially pass out. It does happen, but that takes a lot of force, and we're trying to do it with as little force as possible. So I kind of prefer, I do prefer them facing me, so I know where they're at, and I prefer them, besides the obvious of I want them to face there. But again, we talked about this in the last video. If we look at my thighs, right, they're creating that V there. And so if I start with him all the way down onto my junk, right, I've got nowhere to go. I'm going to have a hard time finishing this because he's already as far down as possible. And if we look here, and you might not be able to see this, but my thighs, they taper out and they come outward, and then they taper back in, right? So this is going to be your origin, your insertion of those adductor complex. So again, they get wider, just like the biceps, right? That's a better example. So you can see it's in, out, right? So I want to hit, if this was my thigh, I want his neck to be right there. So I want to be hit up here not down here if I'm finishing that choke. And the reason for that is because, again, we're driving into the anterior sides of that muscle. So when I lock up, you know, there's no technique here to finishing it. And in fact, you can kind of see that little V right there. There you go. Where it starts to taper back in. So what I want his neck right here as I'm squeezing, and then I'm going to draw my his head down, right? And again, to get that pressure, you know, I'm not going to be here and trying to do that. That's just going to be adductor strength. If I want to really get a lot of pressure on that, I'm going to stretch my heels up to the ceiling, and then I'm going to draw his head down from this position so that his arteries are running into those muscles. So those are my thoughts on the straight head scissors. That's I think the best position to do it from. I know that you get potentially more glute activation or strength from your glutes if somebody's head is facing, you know, you're basically in that 69 position and their head's facing your butt. And I know a lot of people prefer that because it feels a lot stronger, but if I'm trying to, in this instance, and again, I'm doing this from a jiu-jitsu standpoint, a submission wrestling standpoint, where I'm trying to make it as effective as possible, I want to pay attention to what my anatomy is doing to his anatomy, right? And so, you know, I want to be driving him down into that. If he's facing the other way, I can't do that. I might be able to, you know, pull down by reaching around, but again, his body's going to be here in my way, so I'm going to maybe have to go that way. And, you know, it might be more effective if you can do it that way, but I think it's a lot more, I feel like it's a lot more work to do it that way. So, you know, again, with the lateral, like, his head's here, and being in that position and squeezing his head, or his neck rather, because his head's not going to do much except for maybe dislocate his jaw and give him TMJ. But if he's in this position, and he's straight up and down, which is his choice, right? If he wants to straight get across, great, let him do that. But if he starts to turn his head in towards me, or even the other way around, it's going to be harder to finish. But if he turns in towards me, get a little pull up, he's going to go out. So, going on to the triangle choke. Now, if you've ever seen pictures of a jiu-jitsu tournament, like, people don't triangle choke with without the arm in there. Now, the reason for the arm being in there is not necessarily because we need it to choke somebody out. You can actually get this, no arm. There's a way of doing it. For example, right, I set this up. I can take this hand, grab the ankle, right? So, boot on, grab the ankle there. This is going to basically function as his arm. And the function of the arm is really so that he just can't pull his head out as easily. But, you know, now I'm covering the artery on this side with this forearm. I'm covering the artery on this side with my hamstring. And I get here, and then I do that thing that we talked about in the body scissor video where I'm going to externally rotate and slide. So, again, the thing about a triangle choke is it's all about space. Any choke, really. I'm closing up space, and I'm crushing all this here, right? So, if, let's say, for example, I've got this shit going on. You see that my shin, or my tibia, my lower leg, is not behind my knee, right? So I'm creating all this more space. You can see when I'm on my side, look at all that space here, less space. So if I want to have a strong triangle, I need to get that behind there. So when I get my legs up, I've got one arm in, it's going to be the arm on this side, right? I'm going to come up, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be in this crappy triangle position. Now, if I wanted to, I could pull down the head and potentially actually finish that from here. But it's not going to be as secure. He can potentially pass very easily and all that. So from here, I'm going to reach up. I'm going to grab my shin. I'm going to take this off. So this is now going to be taking the role of what my top leg was doing there. And this is going to go down on his hip, preferably. It can go on the ground, but his hip's going to be better so he can't follow. And then I'm going to change my angle. So I'm going to bring my head over to the leg that's on this side. So I'm going to change that angle, and you see what happens when I do that? It moves this part of my leg to the back of his neck. I want it going, you know, like this. It's perpendicular to to my neck rather than this way, right? Because I want all that pressure to be on the neck. So I'm going to pivot, and then I'm going to lock up, boots on. I'm going to move my leg out. So you see that, again, we talked about this in the body scissor video, but if I'm like lazy with this, you see how much space that actually opens up. I'm going to have a much harder time finishing this. So I'm going to put my boot on. I'm going to move my foot out so you can see that's closing up more space. And I'm on that angle now, right? So I'm probably 45 degrees to parallel to him. Now to finish this, you see, I can't really get a whole lot more by just pinching my knees together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cricket rather, right? I'm going to slide my shins together, and that's going to give me that finish, right? So, and it's not going to take that much, right? So, let's say they're just trying the pass-through guard. We talked about this in one of the videos in this playlist. So I bridge up, or whatever way. He's got one arm in, maybe I've got control over this arm on this side, and he like is dumb and he takes this arm out. I just bridge up and I catch here, right? I'll throw both legs up, and maybe I'll pinch a little bit, not to try to choke him out, but just to maintain control. He's not getting this arm out anymore, right? Another thing I can do to prevent that arm from coming out is keeping this leg tight to that side of the body, right? So then I get here, you know, and then I'm going to reach through, grab my shin, and then I'm going to bring this. Notice that I'm keeping my knee close to that foot, right? I've got that connection the whole time. I'm going to pivot, and when I'm doing this, I'm not trying to crush down, I'm not squeezing down on them too much. I want there to be a little bit of looseness here so I have the ability to pivot, right? So I might take this hand, I might go underneath his knee on this side, pivot, and then without opening up any space there, I put that leg back over, I pinch my knees, internally rotate both my knees, so I've got that flared out, and then I cricket, and that's going to finish that triangle choke. So, like I said, I'm planning on kind of going through the three most common chokes here. So we're talking about, you know, the straight head scissor, we're talking about the triangle choke. Now I'm going to do the rear naked choke. So the old school way of teaching this is that, you know, you get into this position and you arch back and whatnot. But all somebody has to do is kind of chuck their chin, and that arch back is actually going to help them kind of start to be able to clear that. So I don't necessarily want to do that. So when I get into that position, there's going to be no arm in on this one, right? It's just going to be the neck. I'm going to slide around, and I want to, if I absolutely can, I want his chin and his sternum pointing in the same direction, and I want my elbow pointing in the same direction as both of those body parts. So from here, like, I could potentially grab my own shoulder and finish it here. That will actually work, believe it or not. But what I'm going to do here is I need to bring this hand, I'm going to grab on my own bicep, and I'm not going to put it on his head, okay? This is a dumb WWE thing, right? So my ankles aren't crossed, right? I've got that rear naked choke. If I try to put on the top of his head, and he's not dumb, so he's not just grabbing this arm that's choking him, okay? He might use one hand to do that, but he's going to use the other hand to bring this back, and I don't have much to defend that with. The other thing is that if I'm doing this, the force that I can put out is just going to be pushed down. And so what happens when you push straight down on the head is all that force goes into the jaw, not into the neck, right? So I don't want to be pushing like this. That's not going to do jack shit for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go palm back, right? And so I'm going to be behind his head, and a lot of times I'm going to come down, and I'm actually be able to touch my own tricep here, right? I'm just very, very flat here. And from here, I'm going to collapse in and bring my elbows together, right? You can chop down with this. That will start to set up that and finish that choke. You could flex, but what I find with flexing is it gets too much on the side here, and it becomes too much of a trachea crush. So instead, I'm going to bring my elbows into his sternum, and I'm going to do a little crunch. I'm going to collapse into him like, oh, you're a buddy, I've missed you, I haven't seen you forever. Like, I'm closing up those gaps, and I'm imploding, not exploding, not trying to hang him. That's another thing that I see a lot, is people trying to, even standing, like they'll get to the rear naked choke position, then they'll really start arching up to try to finish that. And again, what you're doing when you're doing that is you're moving the tension onto the jaw. That's kind of the reason why when people have like a hanging fetish, I'm kind of like, why? Because what's happening with that one, again, it's going to be biting more in the jaw, it's going to elongate your neck, you're at much more risk of your neck breaking rather than any type of choking going on there. So I'll get off my soapbox on that one. I know no king shaming. I'm not really king shaming, I'm just saying you're not getting the effect that you're looking for. So that was all out in left field, I apologize. So again, I'm imploding and I'm collapsing in, and that's going to actually hit more of that that lateral anterior position of your neck to kind of finish that choke. I think that's good enough for now, because I think that with the head and arm choke styles like your darce, your head and arm choke, your north-south choke, and anacondas and whatnot, arm and guillotine, I think that those are going to be much better to kind of demonstrate with somebody else to be able to work with. So I think that's pretty good for now. If you guys have comments or questions, please put them down in the bottom here, and that's a good way to communicate with me. I think I've added my email to the about section of the Yahoo channel. So if you go there, you can find the email that I've set up just for this account. And keep your eyes peeled. I'm thinking about starting a Facebook group where we can actually chat, and we can start building a little bit more community. People can be bringing up questions that they have, things that they want to focus on, and stuff like that, so that we can really actually start that cross dialogue. Maybe I'll even start a Telegram group or something like that if that's something anybody's interested. So let me know. And I think that is it for tonight. I hope you had fun. Again, check out that workout video that I did with Jet. It's fun, and it's got a really cool cover on there. So yeah, you guys have a good night, and thanks for watching.